Revved Up, ladies and gentlemen. My oh my, what a weekend it was this past weekend for Speed Weeks and just everything in between, honestly. As always, I am your host and always lonely individual, Carter Leonard, back by myself once again. It was another week of differing schedules, mainly on my part. It wasn't the fault of either Adam or Emma, or, it's not really like a pointing the finger thing. It's just things off this podcast get very, very, busy, and you just try to find a way to make time just to get an episode out in general. And not that we don't care about quality. Quality is always a thing that we always strive for, but unfortunately, it's just not what it needs. It just wasn't the week that we had hoped for. But we're still giving out an episode today, so happy Thursday, everybody, on February 9th. And apologies that my mic cut out there for a second, but as I was saying, happy Thursday, February 19th, 2026. It is now episode 3 of this season. And already first week in the books of Speed Weeks, and of course the Daytona 500 this past weekend. We had pretty, I would say, exciting weekend of racing. I feel like that there was a lot more anticipation this weekend than there had been for last year. Of course, it wasn't just the 500. I mean, as a race fan or any stock car racing fan, you always look forward to the Daytona 500 every single year, even if some of the racing with the next gen car hasn't been up to great expectations or anything like that, mainly with fuel saving. But I gotta say, this Daytona 500 is probably arguably the best one in the next gen era so far. I think the second closest to that was 2022, in my opinion. Because 2020, the first two Daytona 500s in the next gen era, I really don't remember us doing like the fuel saving thing. I mean, yeah, you had some like train racing here and there, but it wasn't it wasn't as constant throughout the entirety of the race. Like, you actually genuinely saw racing every now and then. So that it was still good. But this Daytona 500, we kind of went into the expectations of, oh, it's probably going to be fuel saving throughout the first two stages and maybe some 4 wide or 3 wide action. The 4 wide action, you normally get a Talladega just because of how, wide it is. But surprisingly, we actually got a decent amount of racing in stages 1 and 2. Of course, it didn't come without some, wrecks and stuff like that. But we'll get into that a little bit later because we have a lot to talk about on today's episode. The whole weekend in general, all the winners that took place, some pretty interesting. Would you call it controversy as of late? With one particular driver that ran the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race on Saturday night. We'll talk a little bit about that. And, of course, later on in this episode, we'll look forward to this weekend's action at Atlanta Motor Speedway. So, more pack racing this upcoming weekend. I know some drivers are not really a fan of the idea that we start out with pack races in back-to-back weeks, just because of how much chaos and overall carnage that can happen. But Atlanta Motor Speedway, ever since its repave / reconfiguration of 2022, has put on some very exciting racing. And actually, as the pavement has started to weather on more and more, it's starting to lose a little bit of its color. You're starting to see a little bit of bumpiness, and handling is starting to matter again. So as time passes along, it just seems like the Atlanta races have just gotten better and better. But that's still a ways away this episode. We need to talk about, what happened this past week. So let's start off with, how I've been doing. I've been doing really, really great as of this week. I've done a lot of radio broadcasts for our school media. I have also secured an internship for the summer, which if you followed me on Instagram at all lowercase Carter _ Leonard 614, you will know that I'm doing something this summer for a minor league baseball team that is, close to me and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool that we're having that happen. And also, just overall, my mental well-being has been been doing pretty good. And I'm just so happy that, we're able to sit down, or I'm able to sit down and talk with you guys again. Um, when I mean guys, I mean the audience. So, but yeah, just overall, I'm doing really, really great for myself. Just having a little bit of pep in my step. And as for the new viewers of the show, the reason why, and I've already said this, but I'm going to explain this again. The reason why we always open episodes up with small talk is because I like genuinely hearing about everybody's well-being, because I know what it's like to not be okay, and it's okay to admit that. It's okay to let your feelings really pop out and really, show the world how, it's okay to not be okay. And obviously, I'm not trying to turn this into a mental health PSA or anything like that, but that's the main reason why we do it. And I think myself, Adam, and Emma, when they're all here, can collectively agree that it is important to do that because you never know what's going on in somebody else's life. It's truly, it's truly eye-opening to say the least. But with all that being said, let's move on to a more positive note. We have the whole weekend to talk about. Mainly, we start out with the dual races. So both Joey Logano and Chase Elliott won their respected dual races. We had some, of course, open cars make the field. You had the Junior Motorsports number 40 car, mainly of Justin Allgaier, which Justin probably had one of his best Cup races that he's had in his entire career, even though he's not a full-time Cup Series driver, but we'll get to that later on. You had the 40 car of JRM trying to, Justin Allgaier for Junior Motorsports trying to make it into the field. And then you had Chandler Smith in the 36. This is the third time that Chandler Smith, who's currently a full-time Truck Series driver, which we'll also talk about him in a little bit. This is the third time that he's tried to attempt the Daytona 500. His first attempt was 2023 when he was with Colleague Racing for that one season, mainly full-time in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. He couldn't even get a qualifying lap going, so he didn't even make the dual race. He just couldn't get a qualifying lap going at all. Then 2 years later, we saw him attempt the Great American Race again with Garage 66 and their number 66 Ford Mustang. But he ended up wrecking in his respective dual race. A lot of front end damage to that car. And while he didn't get into a wreck this time around, Chandler Smith, unfortunately, once again missed it, this time in the 36 car for Front Row Motorsports. So both of the four teams of RFK Racing, who had the 99 of Corey LaJoie trying to make it in, and Front Row Motorsports couldn't get their respective fourth entry into the field this weekend. So, yeah, truly a tough time for Ford fans out there who like seeing Fords get into the 500. But Casey Mears, who is trying to near 700 Cup Series starts, I believe it is, just inched one start closer as he was able to race his way into the 500. Anthony Alfredo initially made the 500, but it was reported that he did not pass post-race tech inspection after his dual race, and then he was deemed disqualified. So tough break for Anthony Alfredo. Trying to do everything right in the dual race, but then there's just some things in the racing world that are just completely out of your control. And, that sort of thing happens, and just a overall tough break for him. Now moving on to the Friday Night Truck Series race, which was actually probably one of the best truck races that I have seen at Daytona in a long time. We'll also talk a little bit about ratings overall as a whole this weekend, because ratings overall for either the Fox races or the CW actually saw a little bit of good progression. So that's definitely a talking point that we're going to look at later on. And it's probably not going to be something that we're going to do every single week. Of course, ratings are a big talking point in NASCAR, especially in today's NASCAR. But this is a week where we saw a lot of uptick in it. So let's rapidly move forward with that. Let's talk about the Truck Series race Friday night. We had a lot of interesting names in the field. Of course, Tony Stewart making his first NASCAR sanctioned return since the 2016 season. You, of course, had the ever so popular Cletus McFarlane, who ended up wrecking on lap 7 coming out of turn 4, driving the Ford truck for Nice Motorsports. You, of course, had Ram making their first return to Daytona since however long, and leading their first laps in the series since, I believe the Fox broadcast said 2014, because I keep forgetting, while Dodge and Ram left their support in 2012, Ram was still around in 2013 and 14, but just with not the major factory backing, if that makes any sense. So, but overall, it was a really good truck race that ended up having a really good finish to it, and that being Chandler Smith, who we just mentioned trying to make the Daytona 500. Although he had a better Thursday night, his Friday night was definitely a complete turnaround in the motions, as he was able to score the season opening win at Daytona for the 38 truck of Front Row Motorsports. And Emma technically got her prediction right for that race. She had his teammate, that being the 34 truck of Lane Riggs, winning it. But it ended up being instead the 38 truck. So I'll give Emma half credit for predicting that a Front Row truck was going to go to victory lane. So I got to give her some credit for that. Emma, you could thank me later the next time that we're on the show together. But how the finish essentially took place was that there was a lot of coming to the white flag. There was an accident that I believe happened after the start-finish line. There was a couple trucks that went around, but since they were past the start-finish line and they weren't going to interfere with the leaders, NASCAR just decided, hey, they're past the start-finish line, let them go green, and let's see what happens here. You had a few other trucks in there. You had the previous Super Speedway winner in the Truck Series, Gio Ruggiero, who won at Talladega last fall, up there in the mix as well. And I gotta say, Ruggiero so far in trucks has definitely made some noise on the super speedways. Like, obviously he had a third place finish at Daytona last year, and he of course so far his only truck win came at Talladega last fall. So he definitely knows how to get himself in the right place at the right time at these races. But you saw John Hunter Nemechek for Hallmark Friesen Racing up there as well, trying to pull away. And it looks like Nemechek going into 3 and 4, looks like he has the win in the bag, but as we all know with super speedway racing, you can't always get too far out front. Otherwise, it's going to lead to a very, very not so fun result, if that makes any sort of sense. So, Nemechek is leading through 3 and 4, but the other trucks of like Ruggiero and I believe Caden Honeycutt was also up there as well, are trying to get some huge runs going, and they're trying to create, any momentum whatsoever to get by the 62 truck. And when they're coming to the travel, everybody else decides to go up, but the 38 truck of Chandler Smith stays right on the bottom, and he's able to squeeze by. It was almost a 4-wide finish, if you ask me. It was almost a 4-wide finish to end the race, but Chandler Smith able to pull off another victory in the Truck Series. I believe that's his 8th all-time Truck Series win, and the 3rd time that he's won with Front Row Motorsports, and of course his first win of the 2026 season. And you can only imagine that Chandler Smith will be one of the chase truck contenders as the season goes along, because he's proven that he can win at any sort of oval, whether it's a mile and a half, a short track. Mainly short tracks is where Chandler Smith has done a really good job at. Last year, his 2 wins were at Bristol and North Wilkesboro, so he's proven that he can get it done. So, congrats to Chandler Smith and the 38 truck for Front Row Motorsports. I do, before we move on, do want to give a big shout out to Ram and Colleague as a whole. They were able to lead 20 out of the last 40 laps of the race, mainly from the 16 truck of Justin Haley, who was my pick. So obviously Justin Haley didn't win the race, but I kind of feel like I deserve a little bit of credit for that pick, simply because of the fact that Haley was in the mix for the last, as I mentioned, 20 of the 40 remaining laps of the race. So Ram was able to lead some laps that Friday night. And Brendan Queen also, with his first Truck Series race with Ram, this year. Was able to get Rams' first top 10 of the year. He came home 7th, so he was definitely in the mix all night long. A few other names in this race. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. driving the 45 for Nice. I can't remember exactly where he finished in this race. I believe, I want to say he did finish inside the top 10. Yeah, he did. He actually finished one spot ahead of Brendan Quinn. He actually came home 6th. Nemechek came home 5th. Few other notable names in the field. Cole Butcher with the 14th place finish. Minnie Tyrell, his very first NASCAR National Series start, wasn't... the Fox broadcast did talk about him during this race, but it was only because of the fact that he was the Ram Race for the Seat winner, so you know that was going to be a big talking point, coming into this race. He managed to get a top 20 in his first truck start on a super speedway track, and, all things considered, that is definitely not a horrible way to start out, and I believe he was mainly incident-free the entire night, so, great learning experience all around for the 21-year-old Virginia native. Of course, as we mentioned, Tony Stewart, had a DNF in this race as well. Carson Hocevar was also in this race, and I believe this is a Truck Series race that Hocevar would definitely love to forget, because he had not one, not two, but 3 separate spin incidents the entire race. And I believe the last one didn't result in the caution because obviously the field was already way past him and he was able to get it back rolling. But just, a night that the former Truck Series winner would like to forget. Current 5 Truck Series wins his entire career. And then, of course, Cletus McFarland, a.k.a. Garrett Mitchell. Actually, it's vice versa. Garrett Mitchell, a.k.a. Cletus McFarland, finished dead last, 37th in the Truck Series race. He was the first incident of the night, which, alongside Natalie Decker, it's a main talking point that's been going on about certain qualifications, but we're going to have a separate talking point about that later on this episode. But moving on to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race. I would say this was another solid race until it pretty much wasn't, for a lot of reasons, I would say, because as we all know, Austin Hill, when it comes to these races in this series on any sort of drafting style track, he's good. As much as we're not the biggest fans of Austin Hill, we can admit that he is good at these style of tracks. And the main reason why a lot of people were frustrated is not solely because of the fact that he won. Of course, some people, a good majority of race fans out there do not like Austin Hill, and some of that is warranted. I'm not going to sit back and say that I completely disagree with them, as I try to be unbiased on the show as possible, but a lot of the frustration was mainly vented towards the other drivers in the field. And what I mean by this is that a lot of people were pointing out that when there was times when the 21 car was able to control both lanes and was able to get out front, nobody could do a single thing. And it didn't look like anybody wanted to really work together, if that makes any sense. Which, I don't know how true that is, but I do agree with the idea that the effort to try to, get past the 21 car was definitely not the where it needed to be. And listen, like I mentioned, Austin Hill, extremely tough to beat at these races, and we know this. And he's probably going to be tough to beat when we go to Atlanta this upcoming weekend. But I feel like there were times where there could have been an opportunity to finally fly by the 21 car, and it just didn't happen. It just did not happen. And yet a win happened. But not only was Austin Hill's win a big talking point that night, but also an incident that happened late in the going with less than 40 laps to go. One of the first major incidents of the race happened in turn 1, collecting drivers such as Sam Mayer, Taylor Gray, William Sawalich, who actually had a really solid showing before that incident. William Sawalich was actually leading a decent amount of laps. He was staying out of trouble, but unfortunately trouble found him, and he was collected in an incident. But why am I talking about this incident mainly? Well, it's mainly because of the ending part of the incident. Of course, every driver that was involved in this wreck did climb from their cars, and they appeared to be okay. But it was when you thought everything was settled down, but it wasn't. So Sam Mayer, driver of the 41 car for the Haas factory team, the front end of his race car is just junk. I mean, he can't even see out the front of his windshield, and he decides to roll back up the track. Now, not the smartest move, because when you hear your spotter over the radio go, hold the brake, hold the brake, hold the brake, you try your best to stop. And maybe in defense of Mayer, that car was just rolling on his own, and he tried his best. But as soon as Mayer was coming off the track, another car was trying to get through the wreckage by staying high, and that was the 35 car of Natalie Decker. And when you look at the aerial shot of the replay that the CW gave us, Decker has all the time in the world to slow down and try to go beneath that rolling 41 that's going up the track. Instead, it doesn't even look like Decker slows down whatsoever. And it's not like there was another car in front of Decker to the point to where she couldn't see Mayer roll back up the track. It doesn't even look like she slows down, and she plows into the side of the 41 car, ending her day. And then she comes on the radio, and of course, I can't repeat everything that she said on the radio because we try to keep this a family-friendly show, which I've been telling Adam that, but he never listens to me. She comes on the radio and is just like, "Oh, that hurt. Why in the F?" You know what that means. Let's not play around. Why in the F was he rolling back up the track? Natalie, I may not be a race car driver. I mean, that goes without saying. But I know for a fact you had an ample amount of time to hit the brakes and try to swoop beneath the 41 car. I mean, was there a chance that you were probably going to make contact with him? Sure. But I guarantee you it would have been not as catastrophic as what just took place. So, you can't even defend Natalie Decker in this situation. Not because of what you think the reasoning is. You would say this. Any race fan would say this about any driver. If you don't hold the brakes and you run into someone, knowing good and well that you have a lot of time to try to slow yourself down. And I get it, when you're traveling at speeds like that, it's really hard to slow down because the distance shrinks so quickly. But like I mentioned before, it doesn't even look like Decker hit the brakes right there. She wasn't even paying attention. Any driver who does this, that's their fault. That's their fault. And there's no other way of putting it. So, this incident right here, and I guess we might as well just talk about it while we're here, has really brought up a lot of questions as of late. Mainly this week, about certain qualifications in regards to racing at big tracks. And Natalie Decker, even before this race, was facing and still is facing a lot of backlash over some comments that she made on Matt Tiff's new podcast, which is, by the way, a great podcast. I know this is a serious topic of conversation here, but that is still a great podcast that I would suggest any race fan would go listen to. Matt Tiff doing big things after his racing career. He's trying to resurrect Mansfield Speedway in the state of Ohio, so gotta love that for any Ohio race fans out there. But she was already facing a lot of backlash on social media because of certain comments she made. Now, I'm not going to repeat those comments, of course, but we all know exactly what exactly I'm referring to. But this incident right here just made it 10 times worse. And I saw a lot of people on social media also bring up the fact that Cletus McFarland has only ran so many ARCA races in his short time as a race car driver. And now he's already getting a Truck Series star. And all he had to do was pass a test session at Rockingham Speedway. I'm going to say an opinion here, and which is what we do on this show. We give our respective opinions, and, you know, it's okay if you disagree with me on this, which I don't. Honestly, with what the majority rule is with some race fans right now, I probably don't think a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this. I do not believe Cletus McFarland should have been in the truck race. I'm sorry. But doing well at a test session at Rockingham Speedway does not automatically mean you can handle pack racing in the Truck Series at Daytona. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh my God, well, he handled pack racing in the ARCA Menard Series. Those two series are two completely different things. And that's not even a debate. That is a legit proven fact. But passing, like, if this was a Truck Series test at Daytona and he was able to handle a pack well, okay, fine. But comparing Rockingham to Daytona, it's not even an apples and oranges comparison. It's like comparing an apple to a 1996 Toyota Camry. And I know what you're probably thinking. Carter, that makes absolutely zero sense. That's the point. They're not even comparable with each other. Now, does this mean that I think Cletus McFarland should not ever get a chance at a Truck Series race ever again in his lifetime? No, that's not what I'm saying. But do I believe that he was fully prepared for that race Friday night? Absolutely not. And I know what a lot of people are going to think. Oh, well, you're not a race car driver. You don't know exactly what you're talking about. Regardless of how you feel, you know, you have to pass certain qualifications before you go out there. And for Natalie Decker's case, it's a little bit different because she has ran pack races at Daytona. She's had a lot more experience compared to Cletus McFarland. Again, another proven fact. But you could still have experience and still perform dumb moves like this. And then there was this whole rant on social media, mainly started by current ARCA Menard Series driver Taylor Reimer, followed by young Toyota prospect Jade Avedissian, discussing about how, I can't remember, it had, of course, had something to do with females in racing, which I'm all for having females race stock cars or race any sort of, motorsport series for that matter. But, of course, there are a lot of nasty people out there that are going to, criticize them because of, what they identify as, who they are, and, you had that whole discussion on Twitter. I'm not going to get into the whole nitty gritty of it because I don't personally feel like it's in my place of judgment to do that. But yeah, there you go with that. So, Natalie Decker. That happened. That certainly did happen. Now, moving on to a more positive note from what we just discussed. The Daytona 500, the Great American Race. This was the 68th running of the Daytona 500. It actually had a pretty decent amount of storylines going into it. Of course, Kyle Busch winning the pole on Wednesday night, the first ever time that he's done that in his illustrious career. This was his 21st attempt at the 500. So, of course, the best starting position that he's ever had for a 500. Then, of course, you had William Byron, looking the previous two-time winner of the 500, looking to go 3 in a row, which still to this day has never been done. And then just a few other notable names in the field. Of course, looking for their first career win, looking for their first Daytona 500 win. So the race got off to a pretty interesting start. It didn't take until lap 10 for something to happen. As lap 5, we already had a spin in turn 1 with the 78 of BJ McLeod, and actually gave a little bit of damage to the 24 car of William Byron, who was kind of riding around a little bit more in the back a little bit there, which is kind of unusual for a Hendrick car in regards to qualifying for the 500, but it did indeed happen. Byron was able to continue that race, but definitely not the start that he wanted. Neither the 78 car, BJ McLeod, who was one of the open cars to race themselves in to the Great American Race. I apologize. There was a can that just accidentally knocked over. Do apologize for that. But we also did have a lap 3 tribute, which this past Wednesday, ladies and gentlemen, was the 25th anniversary of the passing of the great Dale Earnhardt, who lost his life on the final lap of the 2001 Daytona 500. Still, 25 years later, the NASCAR community still mourns that loss. And, of course, we had a silent lap 3 tribute in honor of the Great Intimidator. And also, we also had a silent lap 16 on the 500 as well, with Greg Biffle being honored. As we all know, Greg Biffle tragically lost, and his family lost their lives in a plane crash this past December, which still a very tragic situation. And, you know, we'll definitely miss, you know, the Biffle and that whole entire family. So it was nice to see Fox, you know, pay those tributes, as, you know, we all love doing that. You know, anytime we remember somebody who is very important to our sport, like both Earnhardt and Biffle. Which, speaking of Fox Sports, one thing I do want to definitely talk about this race, Fox Sports, their coverage wasn't actually that bad. Of course, you know, there was a decent amount of full screen commercials, but when Fox needed to do side by side in order to keep, you know, people seeing the action, they did do that. And I think it was a lot better compared to last year's 500. I definitely think they improved a lot better. Are there some things that could definitely be fixed? Yes, absolutely. But Fox's coverage was pretty decent enough that the official viewership for the Daytona 500, which just came out recently, has been reported to be 7,489,000 views, which is an 11% jump over the 2025 500. Now, of course, we have to understand the context of the jump. The jump was because last year's 500 did end up getting a rain delay, but still managed to pull almost 7 million viewers. They got about 6.7 million viewers for last year's 500. And for all the kids watching, stop making 6-7 jokes. They're not really that funny anymore. I don't know why we still make them. I thought we left this behind in 2025. I guess not. So, but a big viewership poll for the 500 this weekend, and overall, viewership as a whole was definitely really, really great because the Truck Series on Friday night also had a great viewing on FS1 nonetheless. Now, normally when you tune in to FS1, you don't really expect to get over 1 million viewers, but the Truck Series race had 1,387,000 viewers, which was way better compared to last year's, which was only 1,014,000 viewers. It becomes the most watched Truck Series race since 2016, and it was a 1,604,000 peak viewership from 9:45 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So Truck Series pulling some big season opener numbers as well. And then for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, while not on Fox, is on CW Sports, which CW Sports, of course, always does well with their coverage. Sorry for the little pause right there. I had to pull it up. But the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series season opener got 1,812,000 viewers on Saturday night, and the race drew 340,000 viewers in the adults 18 to 49 demographic, the best for an event in that series since the 2018 season. So overall, ratings this weekend were trending in the right direction. Of course, could it always be better? Yes, but this is a good stepping stone. And I think with NASCAR kind of trending towards a more, better point system that's not going to drive viewers away. Of course, you would still like to see a full season point standing, but that's a conversation for another time. I feel like there's been a lot more social media attention for Daytona 500 than it has been in a good while now. But let's talk about the overall winner of the Daytona 500, because when we did the first episode this year, when we did the preseason, poll talking about each teams and drivers, I was really on the hype train of this guy finally getting back to victory lane after going winless the previous season, and that is the 45 of 2311 Racing, Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick is this year's Daytona 500 champion. He was able to win it on a last lap pass against the number 9 car of Chase Elliott from a push from the 35 car of Riley Herbst. Herbst, not a terrible showing in the 500. He was able to get a top 10 finish despite slamming into a wall after trying to pull a bad block on Brad Keselowski. But regardless of how you feel about Herbst wrecking the field behind the 45, he did his teammate a big favor in getting by the 9 car, and a lot of Chase Elliott fans, including Adam included, were very heartbroken at this inconvenience. That's 3 500s now that Chase Elliott could have won. 2017, he ran out of fuel with about 3 to go. That could have been his first career win. Of course, the 2021 500 where Michael McDowell was able to edge out the 9 car for the win as soon as the caution came out. And then, of course, this year where Elliott got passed on the final turn of the last lap by the 45 car, and to add insult to injury, he got wrecked before coming to the start-finish line. Was still able to finish top 10, considering all things considered, but definitely, once again, a tough break. But as for Tyler Reddick, of course, this is a big win for him, not only for him, but for 2311 Racing as a whole. They've won. This is their second crown jewel win in the past several months. Of course, Bubba Wallace last year, winner of the Brickyard 400, and now Tyler Reddick has the Harley J. Earl Trophy in his possession with Michael Jordan in attendance as well. They actually did a little bit of a pre-race show talking point with Michael, saying how big of an event this is, and Michael Jordan, I think we can officially say, is having a lot more success than he did when he was owning the Charlotte Hornets of the NBA. But then again, that goes without saying. I'm sorry to any Charlotte Hornets fans listening out there. I hope it gets better for you, but we'll see about that. But as for Jordan, now he has, of course, Jordan, one of the most popular figures in all of American professional sports, and you just knew after this win, with how big of a race this is and how big of a win this was going to garner a lot of media attention. And it for sure did. Of course, there was that little controversial thing that happened, that one MJ clip, but Tyler Reddick was able to clear the air and say that it wasn't anything malicious. So I wasn't going to talk about that anyway, but I feel like that's something that needs to be brought up. But Reddick was getting all the popularity you could imagine because of this. He was on the Stephen A. Smith show. Of course, we all know who Stephen A. Smith is in the American sports world. USA Today, which they've always interviewed Daytona 500 winners in the past. So that's not entirely different, but still a show that a good, decent amount of people across the country always try to tune into. Sports Center was talking about the 500, even though they still refer to the Cup Series as the Sprint Cup Series. I guess they're still stuck in the 2014 era, but then again, I don't completely blame them because I miss 900 horsepower, but regardless, so yeah, this was garnering a lot of national media attention, and that's good for the sport of NASCAR. Now, I saw a couple of people say, I feel like this is more about Jordan than it is Tyler Reddick. Personally, while I do think some of that is true, I don't fully believe that's fully the case. I do believe that Reddick deserves some credit for it. And of course he deserves a lot of credit for it. What am I talking about? Some. He's the winner of the race. He should be talked about. But when your team owner is Michael Jordan, you're going to garner attention. And I know I've said this 3 times already, but with how popular of a figure it is, the attention that you gain from it, it's going to be a little bit about Michael. So that's all I really need to say. But as a NASCAR fan, regardless if it's mainly about Tyler or mainly about Michael, I'm not going to sit back and complain about it. Whatever gets NASCAR the attention that they deserve right now, that's all that matters. That is all that matters. You want to start trending back in the right direction, and that's how you do it. Of course, I do want to talk a little bit more about the finish of the 500 because it was a bit of a wild one. We had some 3-wide racing coming to the white flag, mainly led by the 77 car of Carson Hocevar, which Hocevar did all 3 races. As we mentioned, he had the disastrous Truck Series race on Friday night. He ran the 42 car for Young's Motorsports in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race. And of course, his full-time job on Sunday, driving the 77 car, was actually leading past the white flag lap. And you're thinking to yourself, oh man, is this finally the day that Carson Hocevar not only gets his first Cup Series win, it's going to come at the Daytona 500. Unfortunately for Hocevar, it was not the case because past the start-finish line going onto the front straightaway, Hocevar looks like he tried to get up in front, but just made a little bit of contact with the driver behind him, gets sent up into the wall, collecting drivers like Michael McDowell, who was trying to chase his second 500 win, and Eric Jones, a previous Daytona winner, as well, collecting multiple other drivers in the field, which it took a few people on social media to really show us the replay of the wreck. And I wasn't mad at the fact that we didn't see the full wreck in the live cut because, of course, Fox was worried about, the leaders, and they did a good job of panning to them and making sure that we kept tabs on who was going to win this race. So credit to Fox for that, but just wish we could have seen a replay afterwards of that. But overall, a big congratulations to Tyler Reddick and the 45 team for 2311 Racing. Tyler Reddick, with the year that he had last year, and it wasn't like Reddick had a completely bad season last year. He just, he wasn't running completely terrible. He just could not get over the hump and get the victory lane, which that 45 car is capable and known of doing. Tyler Reddick is a proven Cup Series winner. You're expected to go to victory lane, and there was a lot of on-track and off-track things going on for him that really sort of hindered that whole thing, and you could only really feel, bad for him in that situation, especially the off-track stuff with his newborn son having, really scary medical issues that you never want to see happen. But the Reddick family has showed their resilience as of late, and they've been able to pull through. And this was just the the icing on the cake of that pulling through story. So Tyler Reddick finally back to victory lane. Only his 9th career Cup Series win. Of course, a previous back-to-back O'Reilly Auto Parts Series winner in 2018 and 2019. But now he can call himself a Daytona 500 champion, just like his car owner, Denny Hamlin, who is a 3-time winner of the Great American Race. But now he went to victory lane in this race on Sunday as a car owner. So Denny Hamlin is definitely one of a few people that can really, really say that. So yeah, just overall a pretty good Daytona 500, I would say. It's not one of the greatest I've ever seen, but however, I do believe that this 500 was the best one in the next gen era. Of course, there was the 3-wide fuel saving in stage 3, but when the cars were actually racing against each other, when the drivers were actually putting the pedal to the metal, the pack racing was watchable. It was actually good. It was good racing. Could it be a little bit better with this car? Yeah, of course. Was it terrible, though, when they were actually racing? No. Personally, I don't think so. So, if I were to rate this race out of 10, I would definitely give it an 8.5 out of 10. Now, of course, with the podcast, we always take a look at the podcast points. Kind of a similar start to last year, where Adam takes an early lead with 5 points. His pick, who was Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick's teammate, ended up finishing, I believe, 10th in the Great American Race, if I recall correctly. And yeah, Bubba Wallace finished 10th. So with the top 10, Adam, who is the defending champion of podcast picks, starts off with 5 points, so he's off to a decent start. And me and Emma both come away with 1 point equally, which I'm currently second, and Emma is once again starting dead last in picks. Hopefully one day for Emma it does get better. Maybe this season will get better. We still have 35 other races to go. But now you might be wondering, well, both of you are tied with the same amount of points. How do you guys decipher that whole thing, and how do you decide that? Well, my pick was Ryan Preece. Emma's pick was Ryan Blaney. Now, when you look at the final finishing results, the reason why I am ahead is because Preece finished ahead of Ryan Blaney. Preece was able to finish coming home at the end of the race backwards, might I add. He came home backwards, so he was able to finish that race on 25th. Preece came home 25th. Blaney came home 27th. So since my pick finished 2 spots better in that situation, I'm the one who gets the second place jump. If it was vice versa, then Emma would be second and I would be starting dead last. So there you have it for the podcast points going into this weekend. Which, speaking of picks, I don't have every single person's pick for this week. I do have my picks available, but when both Adam and Emma's picks are made available for this week, we will, of course, officially post it on our Twitter/X account, which you guys could go follow at all lowercase Revved Up Pod on Twitter/X. Now, let's take a look at the weekend schedule, ladies and gentlemen. We're coming down to the end of the show. I know a lot of this episode was mainly talking about the Daytona 500 and pretty much Speed Weeks as a whole, but then again, when you have this week happen, you're going to be talking a lot about it. So, let's get into the weekend schedule for this upcoming weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway, which I know its legal name is Echo Park Speedway, but I'm sorry, I'm still not going to be calling it that. I know it's sponsored, but I'm still calling it Atlanta. It's still Atlanta Motor Speedway, because even when Charlotte Motor Speedway was called Lowe's Motor Speedway, guess what? People still refer to it as Charlotte Motor Speedway, and I'm going to be doing that exact same thing, so there you go. But yeah, let's take a look at the weekend schedule for Atlanta Motor Speedway, if I could pull it up really quick. All right, here we go. So for the truck, so all 3 series will be at Atlanta this weekend on Friday, February 20th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Qualifying for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series begins at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Fox Sports 1. And then, of course, on Saturday, February 21st at 1:30 p.m., the Truck Series will have their second race of the season on FS1. For the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, they'll begin their action on Friday as well, beginning at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Qualifying for their second race of the season will be streamed on the CW app. And then, of course, on Saturday, February 21st, after the Truck Series race, live coverage for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race, the Bennett Automation Transportation's 250, will begin at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on CW Sports. For the Cup Series race, they will also have qualifying on Saturday, this time at 11 p.m., streaming on Amazon Prime. Of course, Amazon Prime streams every non-major crown jewel race the first half of the year for practice and qualifying. And then Sunday, February 22nd at 3 p.m. Eastern, covers beginning at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's the Am Better Health 400 on Fox, and that's main Fox, ladies and gentlemen. So there you have it. That's your weekend schedule. And so far, the weather for the upcoming Sunday race should actually be really nice. Should actually be in the mid-70s, which is kind of interesting for late February as we get into the later part of February. But it should be a very nice race, and no weather should be included. So let's get down to race picks for this weekend, ladies and gentlemen. So starting off with the Truck Series race at 1:30 on Saturday. My pick is pretty simple. I'm going to go with the 7 truck of Kyle Busch. He has won this race the previous 2 years, and he will also begin his Truck Series stint this year, although it'll be 8 races instead of the typical 5 due to new rule changes that I'm not really a big fan of, but, that's my personal opinion. So I'm going to go with the 7 truck of Kyle Busch for Spire Motorsports. On Saturday night, the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series takes center stage at Atlanta Motor Speedway on the CW Sports. And my pick is pretty simple. I'm going to go with the 21 car of Austin Hill. The reason being is simply because, for whatever reason, no driver can figure out how to beat this guy on drafting style tracks. And if they couldn't do it at Daytona, I don't see how they're going to be able to do it unless the 21 car gets wrecked that early, which I would not wish that upon anyone, but if there's any way for them to really make this a compelling race, that would be it. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, Nick Sanchez was able to do it last year. That's why it's called last year. That's last year. That's in the past now. So there you go with that. So the 21 car of Austin Hill is definitely going to win Saturday night. I could almost bet $5 that that's probably going to happen. Now, for the main event on Sunday, 400 miles, 267 laps, I believe. Yeah, 267 laps for the second Cup race of the 2026 season. This race last year in the spring had another 3-wide finish, kind of, if you want to count it, coming to the caution flag. But one driver really sticks out to me in this race, and he was able to win the summer race last year, and he's won at this style of Atlanta numerous times. Give me the 9 car of Chase Elliott. Even if Chase Elliott doesn't win, I could kind of count on him in this race to really give me a good number of points for podcast points this upcoming week. So there you have it for my picks. For the truck race, I have Kyle Busch. For the O'Reilly Series race, I have Austin Hill. And for the Cup Series race on Sunday, I have the 9 car of Chase Elliott. So, with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that will do it for this week's episode of Revved Up. Thank you guys so much for listening in to this week's episode. Tune in next week as we preview the winding road course known as Circuit of the Americas for the 3rd race of the season. And, of course, also the very first Truck Series race at St. Petersburg as well. So, the Truck Series will be in action next week, but it will come at St. Petersburg, Florida. So, as always, I have been your host, Carl Leonard, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.